Well, wait till the cameras are running.
My camera's on.
Go one. He's still not. Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm good.
Oh, I think it's gonna take off at like 50% because the RPM's so low because of the motors.
No! Holy.
Well, that didn't work out.
Could have gone. What do you need to fix that? Holy.
Yeah.
Oh, I think it's gonna take off at like 50% because the RPM's so low. Let's check out the damages.
Here's the motor.
There's one motor. That actually looks perfectly fine.
Yeah.
What do you know?
It's great.
I didn't really break too much. I just broke.
I think you needed a bigger battery.
What is that?
The battery's actually fine.
The battery feels just fine.
Okay, so a lesson for everybody. This thing took me way too much time to build, and clearly it was problematic. Where's my GoPro? Oh, there's my GoPro. Is it still recording?
I don't know.
Yeah, it is. GoPro lasted. Alright, so let's check out the damages, which I'm not going to repair because I'm way too lazy. The motors look fine. The flight controller looks fine. The ESCs all actually look totally fine. It broke apart exactly like it designed. Everything broke apart exactly as intended. Yeah, everything is perfectly fine. Alright, so I am going to... What happened there? Oh, it was the voltage cable from the ESC. Alright, I'm going to rebuild this thing as a quad because this is ridiculous to like maintain something this big. That's the end of this. Sorry. Bye-bye. Alright, so let's discuss what happened. First and foremost, I want to say that I have built a lot of stuff. And when I was on that TV show in Croatia, which I keep talking about, which I don't think is ever going to come out, I built something very much similar, about the same exact thing as this, except that I was using an F3 board, the SP Racing F3 board on 2K, and I'm using an F4 board on this one with 8K, 8K, and I have auto level off. On the other one, I had auto level on for most of the time. And this one I'm taking a couple more precautions, and I was actually using a secondary power source for powering the flight controller, the VTX, and the camera system because I didn't want to deal with any kind of noise issues or vibrational issues at all. So I just took all that out of the equation and just used a separate power source, which worked out fine. And I did test it before on much smaller props. They were like 8 or 9 inch props that I had lying around, and it couldn't couldn't generate enough power to take off. But it was working fine. It was yawing. It was sort of hovering almost a little bit, and it was working totally fine. I have no idea what happened. I've reviewed the video many times, and I honestly have no clue. I have one minor theory, which may have been the cause, but hard to say. The fact that the battery was strapped in the front may have had such an imbalancing effect that it kind of went nuts, and then yeah, I don't know where it went from there. I have no clue. This is similar to, I've had many crafts that I've built where you will just arm it and give it a little bit of throttle and it'll just go nuts. It'll just fly up and go crazy, and then you could disarm it and it'll drop, but you'll crash. And that's what happened in this case. I gave it just a little bit of throttle and it just went full speed, nuts, and it just took off and went crazy. And I was going to disarm, but by the time I went to disarm, it was already like 50-60 feet in the air, and I had some control, so I was yawing it around and trying to like wrangle it in place and control it, but it wasn't going to work out. And when it did crash down, I was trying to flip it upright and blast the throttle to give a soft landing before disarming it, but that didn't work out. For the most part, the frame worked out exactly as intended. I designed the frame to break in a certain way, and it sure enough, broke in exactly the way that I expected it to. Nothing broke except for the wood, which is like $8 of wood, and one motor. This motor bent a shaft, so it doesn't spin freely anymore. Other than that, props are expendable, and well, they're expensive props, but they're expendable even though they're expensive. And that's it. I even built this little tiny one before to test some theories, and that worked out great too. So the giant racing class in general, I previously thought that it was going to be a thing, if it would be a viable option, but now I'm kind of thinking it's a little ridiculous. It takes a whole team of people to really get something like this together and maintain it. I did this over several weeks of, an hour here, an hour there, and finally yesterday I just put all the wires together. It was all that was left was the power lines, and it was just such a pain to solder and put together that, something's got to be done about the power system. The rest of it was relatively easy and quick to build. The power system took like 3 hours to solder up and get it correct. And I think that's really the limiting factor of maintaining this thing, because I can rebuild this pretty quickly, I don't even have to cut the wood. I just have to drill the holes and replace the wood. It's pretty simple. But I'm not going to, because I don't have that kind of time. And I have to mention all the sponsors. Emax made these motors custom made for me, which I feel so bad about crashing, but I have to do something else with them because they made them especially for me. APC gave me a lot of consulting on these props. They did not give them to me for free. They were very expensive actually, but they are very good APC props. China Hobby Line sent me out these 8,000 milliamp 30C packs, which should be just enough power to power all these motors because they're supposed to run at 40 amps at max throttle. Banggood supplied me with half the ESCs, and T-Motor supplied me with the other half of the ESCs. Pyroflip also allowed me to use the resources, the milling and cutting manufacturing resources to cut all the carbon fiber, and eventually it came together. I'm sad that it broke, but honestly I'm happy that it's out of my life because this thing is just way too complicated to maintain. I am going to attempt to build a quad with these motors and props, and I expect the quad to have a similar speed, top speed, as this would have had, because in my experience with this thing and the several octos that I've built, having an octo does not mean it's going to go faster. It also does not mean it's going to be more efficient. It just means you have more blades and you can lift more weight. And that's going to be the same theme in something this big. Having 8 blades, the reason I chose to have an octo is because it's supposed to be a 1 meter class craft, and it's kind of dumb to have a 1 meter size craft that has tiny little props at the end of long arms. So I chose to go with an octo because it would be purposefully 1 meter large. It has to be 1 meter large to fit these 12-13 inch props. Anyways, total disaster, total failure. I've never had a failure this big, disaster this big. Actually, I don't know if I've ever had a Maiden go like catastrophically bad, but this was catastrophically bad. Stay tuned for the quad, I guess, and we'll see how that does. I'm actually going to try using iNav on that setup and see if I can get all these goody functions to work as well. I had to insert this piece here. I know I'm not running capacitors on this craft. I had a big bank of capacitors that I had soldered onto the main solder lead here, and I did not put them on the ESCs because it took me forever to solder up the ESCs, and it was too cumbersome to actually get it to fit in there. So I put a big hunk of capacitance on this battery lead, which I also have a 3-way because I soldered the wrong one and it has too much solder on it, so I couldn't actually get it off to put the other one on. So I just put a second one on in case I wanted to run 2 batteries. And when I plugged it in the first time, the capacitors literally exploded. They just went poof in my face. Good thing I was wearing safety glasses, which nobody seems to wear when they build these things for some reason. But it literally just plume of smoke into my face, just like Electro Boom, that YouTube page, Electro Boom, which is hilarious. And so I took the caps off, and I was running a separate power system, and I didn't expect there to be that much noise feeding back to the ESCs because these are really slow spinning motors, and I figured it would be fine. And in my experience, like empirical experience, actual use, capacitors don't really do anything but increase the longevity and lifespan of your electronics. It doesn't stop things from burning out so much as it just makes it easier for everything to run and lightens up the load and makes everything cleaner. So I've never had a capacitor actually make a real life difference in a simple test here and there. So I expected it to be the same on this craft, especially since I've already built, you know, 2 other massive octos that didn't have any capacitors and ran perfectly fine, as well as every other craft that I just started putting caps on because it's kind of a, you know, the hot thing to do right now. How big of a cap can you fit in your craft?